I can't move my body, I can't move my legs or anything, because the pain is just incredible. You know, there's no cure for sickle cell.
That was Prodigy keeping it real about his battle with sickle cell. Eazy-E got taken out by complications from HIV and AIDS, and Bushwick Bill fought pancreatic cancer till his last breath. These are rap legends who had incurable diseases they couldn't beat, starting with Eazy-E. What started as a simple cough in early '95 would lead to one of hip-hop's most devastating losses. Eric Lynn Wright, known as Eazy-E, had built NWA and Ruthless Records into a West Coast empire, but his wild lifestyle was about to catch up with him in the realest way. That persistent cough he kept brushing off as bronchitis, or just the effects of too many late nights in the studio, quickly turned into serious breathing problems that had him rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in LA. On February 24, 1995, docs delivered news that shook the whole hip-hop world. Eazy had full-blown AIDS. This wasn't no early HIV diagnosis that could be managed. The virus had been wrecking his immune system for years on the low, likely caught through unprotected sex. At just 30 years old, his body was already giving out, with pneumocystis pneumonia filling his lungs and his immune system completely shot. His wife, Tamika Woods Wright, whom he wifed up just 12 days before the diagnosis in a hospital bed ceremony, stayed solid by his side through everything. She later opened up about the heartbreaking moment when they got the results back.
We got the test results back, and the test results came back positive. He is HIV positive. I said, okay, and it took me a minute, and he asked, are you okay? And I just remember, just sitting, crying.
Treatment back in '95 was straight brutal and barely did nothing. Docs put him on AZT, the first approved HIV drug, but it only gave slight relief while causing terrible side effects like nausea and anemia. His condition swung wildly between brief, clear moments where he'd crack jokes with fam and complete delirium from fevers hitting 105. Kidney failure had him on dialysis, and his weight dropped from 160 to under 100 in just weeks. From his hospital bed, Eazy did something real powerful. He reached out to former NWA cats like Ice Cube and Dre, squashing old beef and making peace. On March 16, 1995, he dropped a public statement urging folks to take AIDS seriously and get tested. 10 days later, on March 26th, surrounded by fam, Eazy died from AIDS complications. He was only 30. His death forced hip-hop to finally face HIV and AIDS head-on, breaking down stigma and pushing for more testing in Black communities nationwide. Eazy's AIDS diagnosis came sudden and late, giving him only weeks to fight back, but this next legend battled his incurable disease from the day he was born, living with constant pain for over 4 decades. Prodigy. Pain was Prodigy's constant enemy from day one. Albert Johnson, one half of the legendary Queensbridge duo Mobb Deep, lived with sickle cell anemia from birth, a disease that would shape everything about his life in bars. Diagnosed at just 6 months old in '74, he didn't have no mild version some folks carry without symptoms. P had the full homozygous SS form, where red blood cells twist into rigid crescent shapes under any kind of stress. Those sickled cells would clog his blood vessels, starving his organs of oxygen and triggering crises of unbearable pain. His first crisis hit when he was only 2, and from there, childhood became an endless cycle of hospital stays, missed school days, and blood tests that left his fingertips covered in calluses. Growing up in the QB projects made everything harder. Cold winds triggered leg ulcers that wouldn't heal. Tour buses with stale air sparked breathing problems that left him gasping after shows. The disease stunted his growth to 5'6", and his hemoglobin levels stayed at about half what they should be. By his teenage years, exhaustion was just his baseline. He needed iron infusions and supplements just to get through basic daily activities, but the worst part was the pain itself, something he kept it 100 about in interviews.
Excruciating pain. Like, it's to the point where I can't even move. They have to pick me up or put me in a wheelchair and carry me to the hospital. Like, I can't move my body, I can't move my legs or anything, because the pain is just incredible. There's no cure for sickle cell.
Treatment evolved over the years but never got easy. As a shorty, he relied on powerful painkillers like Demerol when crises hit. As an adult in the 90s, he started taking hydroxyurea daily, which helped cut crisis frequency by about 50% but required constant monitoring. He also took penicillin to prevent infections, which take out more sickle cell patients than anything else. In year 8, his wife Alana donated one of her kidneys after years of damage. The transplant gave him extra years but meant taking drugs drugs that weakened his immune system. After a show in Vegas on June 18, 2017, P checked into a hospital for routine anemia treatment, but a sickle-triggered infection turned into sepsis. His compromised immune system couldn't fight off the pneumonia. 3 days later, on June 20th, 2017, at just 42 years old, Prodigy passed away, finally free from the pain that haunted him his whole life. Prodigy's sickle cell anemia was a single genetic disease that tortured him physically, but this next legend faced a double assault of two autoimmune conditions attacking his body at once. J Dilla. Hospital beds ain't supposed to be recording studios, but for J Dilla, they became exactly that. James DeWitt Yancey was a Detroit production legend whose soul-drenched beats revolutionized hip-hop in the 90s and 2000s. His work made drums feel loose and human while chopping samples into pure emotion. But in early 2002, after a grueling European tour, exhaustion and joint pain led to a diagnosis that would change everything. At 28 years old, Dilla learned he had two life-threatening conditions: thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, called TTP, and lupus. TTP is a rare disorder where the body destroys its own platelets, forming deadly clots. Lupus attacks healthy tissues throughout the body, causing inflammation and organ damage. Together, they were destroying him from the inside. He went from chaining 18-hour studio sessions to needing dialysis 3 times a week just to stay alive. His hands swelled up so bad he couldn't work the pads. His weight dropped from 160 to 120. Treatment became a grinding routine. Plasma exchanges swapped out his blood regularly. Immunosuppressants bloated him. Steroids triggered creative bursts but came with brutal side effects. By 2003, he moved to Cali for better medical care at UCLA Medical Center, but complications kept stacking. Kidney damage from lupus put him on a transplant list he'd never reach. One cat got emotional describing how Dilla spent his final months creating music even as death closed in.
No, you could definitely.
But like, he was like dying and shit, and then his mom was like obviously crying. He was in the hospital. He was making this whole album in the hospital, and he made that song to tell her, "Don't cry when I pass away." You know what I mean? Like, that shit just fucked me up, bro. Like, wow. Yeah, crazy.
Despite everything, Dilla refused to stop creating. From his hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai in late 2005, hooked up to IVs and barely able to move, he recorded his masterpiece, Donuts. His moms wheeled in a portable sampler, and he programmed 31 short tracks, too weak to stand, but determined to leave his mark. The album dropped February 7th, 2006, as his final statement. 3 days later, on February 10th, complications from TTP and lupus caused circulatory failure. Dilla died at just 32, but his legacy lives on through Donuts and annual Dilla Day celebrations. Dilla's TTP and lupus destroyed his organs and forced him onto dialysis, but this next legend's incurable disease required him to become his own doctor, managing insulin and blood sugar every single day just to stay alive. Phife Dawg. Being nicknamed the 5-foot assassin came from Phife Dawg's height and his massive presence on the mic, but another nickname would define his health struggles. Malik Isaac Taylor, one half of A. Tribe Called Quest earned the moniker Funky Diabetic after living with type 1 diabetes from age 19. That diagnosis in 1990 came right as Tribe was blowing up, turning what should have been celebration into a daily battle with blood sugar and insulin. Type 1 diabetes meant his pancreas stopped producing insulin due to autoimmune destruction. Without insulin, blood sugar spikes dangerously high, and without constant treatment, it can be fatal. For Phife, early symptoms were scary. A 20-pound weight loss he thought was tour exhaustion turned out to be his body wasting away. Hypoglycemic blackouts would hit mid-verse, causing shakes and confusion. His vision would blur. Constant thirst left him guzzling water. Neuropathy made his toes tingle, warning of foot ulcers that threatened diabetics with amputation. Managing it became a full-time job on top of being an MC. Early on, that meant 4 insulin shots daily, constant finger pricks to check blood sugar, and turning every meal into math as he counted carbs. By the 2000s, technology helped with continuous glucose monitors that beeped warnings, but complications kept mounting. After 18 years of elevated blood sugar wrecking his kidneys, he needed a transplant in 2008. His wife Alana donated a kidney, giving him a second chance, but the transplant meant taking immunosuppressant drugs for life, leaving him open to infections. Years later, Phife kept it real about how diabetes had completely changed his life.
And they creep up on you, like diabetes is one of those illnesses, and it finally came and kicked my butt. It affected my kidneys, so I had to go through hell and back because of diabetes. And I'm gonna be a diabetic for the rest of my life.
The disease derailed tours constantly. He had to step back from some tribe activities to focus on staying alive. But Fife refused to hide his condition. He openly spit bars about being diabetic and worked with diabetes foundations to help others. In March 2016, after a European tour with blood sugar all over the place, Fife collapsed in Cali. Renal failure and a perforated intestine, both from years of diabetes and immunosuppression, overwhelmed him. On March 22, 2016, surrounded by his tribe fam, Fife Dog passed away at 45. Fife's type 1 diabetes was manageable with discipline and technology, but this next legend faced a silent killer that showed no symptoms until it was already stage 4 and too late to stop. Bushwick Bill. At 3 feet tall due to dwarfism, Bushwick Bill was physically small, but his impact on hip-hop was massive. Richard William Stevens Jr. helped pioneer horrorcore rap with Houston's Ghetto Boys, spitting disturbing verses with his high-pitched voice. But in late 2018, stomach problems he kept blaming on too much BBQ and brew turned into something way worse. Bloating escalated to yellow-tinged skin and terrifying weight loss. In February 2019, docs at MD Anderson Cancer Center delivered devastating news. Bushwick Bill had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The adenocarcinoma had already spread from his pancreas to his liver and lungs, making it essentially untreatable. Pancreatic cancer is called the silent killer because symptoms don't show till it's too late. Stage 4 has only a 3% 5-year survival rate. His dwarfism made everything worse. Spinal stenosis from achondroplasia pinched his nerves, so when tumors pressed on his spine, the pain was unbearable. His short stature also delayed diagnosis because docs initially dismissed his symptoms as digestive issues. By the time they caught it, the cancer was way too advanced. On May 1st, 2019, Bushwick Bill went public with his diagnosis on a podcast.
How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, it's hard to explain how cancer feels, but every day above ground is a good day, and I'm just fighting the frame of cancer against its rumors, lies, and allegations that it's gonna kill me, because I'm just gonna fight it.
Treatment at MD Anderson was aggressive, but ultimately futile. He underwent brutal FOLFIRINOX chemo that blistered his veins and dropped his white blood cell count dangerously low. Fevers spiked to 103, forcing isolation. Radiation targeted liver mets, but caused nerve damage. His dwarfism created logistical nightmares with hospital equipment. He tried everything from cannabis oil to prayer circles with Scarface. A GoFundMe raised over 100 grand for experimental treatments. But pancreatic cancer don't care about fight or faith. Enzymes leaked from the dying pancreas, literally digesting it from inside. Diabetes developed, requiring insulin shots with shaking hands. On June 9th, 2019, after weeks bedridden at Houston Methodist Hospital, toxins built up in his blood, causing hallucinations. Multi-organ failure followed. Scarface held his hand as Bushwick Bill mumbled about the Ghetto Boys, then slipped away at 52. Bushwick Bill's pancreatic cancer spread fast and furious through his small frame, but this next legend's blood cancer ate through his bones slowly while plasma cells turned rogue and multiplied out of control. Guru. Sometimes the battles artists face off stage are more intense than anything on wax. Keith Edward Elam, known as Guru, was the philosophical voice of Gang Starr, dropping baritone wisdom over jazz-infused beats. But in 2009, chronic fatigue and bone pain led to a diagnosis at 48, multiple myeloma. This vicious blood cancer hijacks plasma cells and releases proteins that eat through bones like acid. Black folks get hit by myeloma at twice the rate of white folks, likely due to vitamin D deficiencies and healthcare disparities. The disease wrecked Guru's body systematically. His kidneys started failing from excess proteins, causing his legs and arms to swell. Spinal lesions sparked excruciating back pain. His brother described how Guru pushed through a European tour in late 2009, hiding fevers and night sweats until he collapsed backstage in Paris. His hemoglobin crashed dangerously low. By January 2010, the cancer had taken over his bone marrow completely. Treatment was brutal and ultimately hopeless. High-dose chemo with drugs like vincristine and doxorubicin scorched his veins and caused nausea so severe he could barely sip water. Docs considered stem cell transplants but decided he was too weak. Radiation targeted spinal tumors but caused hair loss, mouth sores that made talking impossible, and nerve damage that numbed his fingers. From his hospital bed, he dictated verses for what would become his final album, Guru 8.0, Lost and Found, featuring Common and Mos Def. His manager Solar enforced strict control over who could visit, issuing vague updates. Fam, including his son Justice, were blocked from the bedside, learning about his condition through media leaks, allegations allegations later surfaced about isolation and potential abuse. On March 30th, 2010, a sudden heart attack triggered by the cancer's toxic proteins plunged Guru into a coma at Good Samaritan Hospital. He lingered for weeks on life support. On April 19, 2010, multi-organ failure finally claimed him at 48. His passing spotlighted multiple myeloma's devastating impact on Black communities. Guru's multiple myeloma hijacked his plasma cells and attacked from inside his bone marrow. But this next legend's rare cancer chose a different battlefield, growing silently in his salivary glands and spreading along his nerves. MCA. Cancer don't care about your legacy or the music you still want to make. Adam Yauch, known as MCA, was a founding member of the Beastie Boys, the group that brought hip-hop to mainstream audiences with License to Ill. In spring 2009, a persistent lump below his left ear became impossible to dismiss. A biopsy confirmed adenoid cystic carcinoma, a rare cancer in the salivary glands. At 44 and headlining Coachella that April, MCA seemed in peak form, but this slow-growing cancer had likely been developing silently for months, spreading along nerves causing facial, numbness, and jaw pain he'd mistaken for TMJ issues. By summer, scans revealed the cancer had spread to lymph nodes in his neck. His mouth turned dry, everything tasted metallic, and swallowing became agonizing. The Beastie Boys immediately canceled tour dates as his energy crashed, and he lost 20 pounds in weeks. Surgery in June 2009 took 12 hours. Surgeons removed the tumor and 30 lymph nodes, leaving his face partially paralyzed and scarred. Then came 6 weeks of radiation therapy that blistered his skin raw and left his voice hoarse. Chemo followed, causing nerve damage that numbed his bass-playing fingers and nausea that kept him out the studio. Yet he kept working, directing the band's short film From a Chemo Lounge. By 2010, scans showed the cancer had spread to his clavicle and pelvis. Yauch turned to Tibetan medicine, using herbal treatments and acupuncture alongside experimental trials. This brought temporary remissions, but couldn't outpace a cancer with only a 40% 5-year survival rate for advanced cases. Complications mounted. Osteoradionecrosis eroded his jawbone. Depression loomed, but Yauch journaled Buddhist mantras, calling cancer a teacher. The disease forced the Beastie Boys into indefinite hiatus. Their last show with MCA at Coachella 2009 became a bittersweet relic. They kept creating though, recording Hot Sauce Committee Part 2 in Yauch's apartment with bedside mics. On May 4th, 2012, cardiac arrest caused by cancer spreading to vital nodes claimed Adam Yauch at 47, his wife and daughter by his side. Over 2,000 people packed his memorial. MCA's adenoid cystic carcinoma was a rare cancer few people ever face, but this next legend battled one of America's most common chronic diseases that slowly destroys the body when left unchecked. Biz Markie. Comedy and tragedy often walk hand in hand, and for Biz Markie, diabetes was the uninvited guest at his party. Marcel Theo Hall burst onto the scene as hip-hop's lovable clown prince, the cat whose wheezing voice gave us Just a Friend. But behind the laughs, a silent killer was taking root. By the mid-2000s, decades of feast or famine living and a 300-plus pound frame started catching up. Around 2010, at 46, a routine checkup revealed blood sugar levels soaring past 300 milligrams per deciliter. He had type 2 diabetes, where the body becomes resistant to insulin. Warning signs had been there for years. Blurry vision during Yo Gabba Gabba, appearances unquenchable. Thirst, numbness in his toes. By 2012, the damage was serious. High blood sugar had clogged his arteries. Mini strokes slurred his signature cackle. Treatment became a roller coaster. In 2011, working with Dr. Ian Smith, Biz shed 140 pounds through portion control and metformin pills. Exercise routines got his A1C levels down from 12% to 7%. But maintaining that was hard when gigs dried up and he'd slip back into old habits. By 2015, complications were stacking. Retinopathy threatened his eyesight, requiring laser treatments. Erectile dysfunction strained his marriage. Sleep apnea left him needing oxygen tanks. Uninsured periods meant skipping meds, echoing the reality for millions of uninsured diabetics in Black communities who face amputation rates twice as high. In April 2020, amid COVID lockdowns, a stroke fueled by diabetes hit Biz during prep for a Baltimore gig. He fell into a coma at Stella Maris Rehab Facility, where he remained for over a year on ventilators. Kidney failure from nephropathy forced weekly dialysis. By July 2021, his enlarged heart and fluid-filled lungs couldn't take no more. On July 16, 2021, at 57, Biz Markie passed away quietly in Baltimore, his laughter finally silenced. Biz Markie's type 2 diabetes came from lifestyle and resistance. His body built up over years, years, but this next legend got hit with the autoimmune version where his pancreas completely stopped working overnight. Ghostface Killah. Not every story on this list ends in tragedy. Dennis Coles, the cat behind Ghostface Killah, has been living with type 1 diabetes since '96, and he's still here, still creating, still thriving. As Wu-Tang Clan's most vivid storyteller, Ghost's stream of consciousness rhymes have been redefining hip-hop since '93. The diagnosis hit in '96 when he was only 26. Ghost went in for what he thought would be a quick checkup during Iron Man recording sessions. Instead, he walked out with news that his blood sugar was at 500 milligrams per deciliter and his pancreas had stopped producing insulin through autoimmune destruction. Type 1 diabetes meant facing a lifelong requirement of insulin injections to avoid diabetic ketoacidosis and comas. Looking back, symptoms had been building for years: rapid 40-pound weight loss, chronic fatigue that blurred studio sessions, even auditory hallucinations. He later connected to high blood sugar starving his brain. The timing couldn't have been worse. Fresh off Wu-Tang's success, Ghost was writing while his body was rebelling. Unquenchable thirst, tingling fingers, vision problems. In Wu-Tang, where showing weakness could become beef ammunition, Ghost kept it quiet at first. His first real crisis hit mid-recording when his sugar crashed hard and he blacked out. Management evolved from crude survival to sophisticated tech over nearly 30 years. Early 90s meant 4 daily insulin shots, constant finger pricks, turning every meal into math. By the 2000s, insulin pens offered more discretion. Quitting weed in 2004 was pivotal because it had been masking dangerous highs. By the 2010s, continuous glucose monitors started beeping alerts through apps, helping him avoid crashes during high-profile moments. Recent years show how far diabetes management has come. In August 2025, Ghost posted Instagram Reels championing the Omnipod pump. His advocacy work with JDRF has helped slash stigma for 1.6 million Americans living with type 1. At 55 as of October 2025, Ghostface Killah is thriving. Recent posts tease 2026 tour dates with Method Man and Nas. In Wu-Tang's chamber, Ghost's story reminds us that real strength is the daily discipline that keeps you in the fight. Ghost's type 1 diabetes forced him into a lifelong daily routine he'll never escape. But unlike him, this next legend faced a disease that could have been caught early and stopped if screening had happened sooner. Kangol Kid. Hip-hop's first generation is fading, and colon cancer claimed one of old school's brightest sparks way too soon. Schiller Sean Fekir, known as Kangol Kid, co-founded UTFO in '83 and helped ignite the Roxanne Wars with Roxanne, Roxanne. That battle rap basically invented beef culture as we know it. But in February 2020, at 53, routine stomach issues turned into a nightmare diagnosis. What Kangol thought was just bloating unraveled when he started seeing blood in his stool. A colonoscopy revealed a stage 3 tumor in his sigmoid colon. The cancer had grown from polyps that went undetected for years. Black men face 20% higher colon cancer rates, likely due to genetic factors and lifestyle issues tied to poverty. Warning signs had been building: 10 pounds lost in weeks, anemia draining his energy, elevated liver enzymes. By summer 2020, CT scans confirmed the cancer had invaded his lymph nodes. On April 27, 2021, Kangol went public with his diagnosis through a live stream, already bald from chemo but still smiling. In a later interview, Kangol opened up about the symptoms that finally made him seek help.
So look, you found out that you had colon cancer in early February, right? A lot of people, they worry about going to get what you just said, which is that colonoscopy, right? There's that fear. They wonder if they're the right age or whatnot. What prompted you to get checked out? Was it some kind of pain?
Well, in terms of pain, there was definitely discomforts, in the belly, of course. One of the signs that you would see immediately is bleeding. And you'll notice this as you wipe, or you'll see it in your stool.
Treatment was aggressive. A March 2020 colectomy at NYU Langone removed the tumor and 20 lymph nodes, leaving him with a colostomy bag. Then came FOLFIRINOX chemo that burned his veins and caused nerve damage. Remission hit by late 2020, and Kangol celebrated with a freestyle on Sway in the Morning on March 31st, 2021. But in October 2021, the cancer roared back with mets to his liver and lungs, pushing him to stage 4. He tried everything and publicly pushed for screening through the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. On December 17, 2021, hepatic failure shut down his fight. He was 55. The Kangol Kid Foundation now funds colonoscopies for underserved communities. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.